Hey beautiful people, welcome back to Angelic Embrace, where we document and narrate the glorious and life-changing near-death experiences sent in by you guys. It is greatly appreciated. So sit back, relax, know that you are loved, and let's get into today's near-death experience story. Consider subscribing and watching to the end to find out what happens. The truth is that I was born into a Muslim family and raised in a Muslim household. I grew up in a household where both of my parents were devout Muslims. My name is Oliver Torrey, and I am a native African who currently resides in Ivory Coast. Although I have been a follower of Christ for the past 6 years, the truth is that I was born into a Muslim family. In 2016, I had an encounter with Jesus Christ that completely transformed my life. After seeing one of your films of a near-death experience that was provided to me by a friend, I felt driven to share something that occurred to me in February of this year 2022 that was very similar to what was described in the video. In 2017, I launched a company that focuses on importing and exporting as a means of engaging in international trade. Our company was thriving, and we had staff members working for us. The COVID-19 pandemic that struck humanity in 2020, most likely in March or April, brought about a complete transformation of everything. It destroyed everything I had worked so hard to build throughout my life. I have 4 children and I'm happily married. This happened when my 4th child was just 4 months old. Due to the outbreak, all operations were halted. We weren't making enough sales anymore, and even our e-commerce platform wasn't helping. Meanwhile, my employees weren't making as much money. In order to get things back on track, I needed to find funding and other investors who would be willing to invest money in my company. I started having health problems, and when I went to see my doctor about them, he told me that I had put too much pressure on myself and that my blood pressure was constantly rising as a result. She recommended that I rest for a long period of time. However, things did not seem to be moving in the right direction, so one Sunday morning, my family and I went to the grocery store. The next thing I knew, I was floating in the air, detached from my body from where I received the call. My body lay motionless on the couch. When I looked over, I saw the foam on the ground, and I also saw my wife crying and praying nearby. In addition, my 3 children were shaking my body in an attempt to wake me up. They probably thought I was sleeping for a while. I watched every move they made. It was impossible for me to touch anything there, and my attempts to speak were futile. I watched every move they made, and I stepped closer to my body once again in an effort to revive myself, but my efforts were in vain. The notion that I had died and abandoned my family came into my head. My oldest kid raced outside to get a neighbor, who then came in to view my corpse when all of a sudden, the door to the complex opened, and a bright light shone. I was pulled out of the house by a strong force and carried outside. When I opened my eyes, I saw that I was standing on top of a very tall mountain. Due to the thick cloud cover over the mountain, its peak was hidden from view. However, I was able to make out everything quite clearly. While I was on the mountaintop, I saw a winged creature flying toward me, and I felt a strong wind rush over me. He said, "While you were on the mountaintop, I saw a winged creature." As soon as he finished speaking, I experienced an overwhelming sense of happiness, and I thank God for caring about us and loving us. 2023 will be our year of joy. Even amid tribulations in the world, the Lord will bless us with health and prosperity according to Him. Those who disobeyed the Lord and chose to serve other gods will not be able to benefit from this blessing. As soon as he finished speaking, I experienced an overwhelming sense of happiness, and I thanked God for caring about us and loving us. Now, on to the next story in our series of near-death experiences. It was a typical day in the life of a young guy who didn't give much thought to his future when all of a sudden, without any prior notice, I felt incredibly uncomfortable and was on the verge of passing out. After being examined by my primary care physician in the neighborhood, he diagnosed me with a straightforward case of the flu. After getting a prescription for antibiotics, I went back to my house. My condition deteriorated rapidly over the course of the next days, and I got a very high temperature. I was unable to consume anything, either food or liquid, which led to my fast weight loss. My mother made the decision to take me back to the doctor on the 7th day when I started having episodes when I would go in and out of consciousness. My uncle had to carry me since I was too weak to stand on my own. The physician diagnosed me with double pneumonia and instructed my family to send me to the hospital as soon as possible. I am unable to recollect a significant amount of what took place since I was constantly slipping in and out of consciousness. I have some hazy memories of being transported on a stretcher from the hospital to the back of an ambulance, and then from the ambulance to the hospital's emergency room. The next thing I remember, a nurse was placing a needle for an intravenous drip into my right arm. For a brief moment, I came to. I was suddenly overcome with an unexplainable feeling of total weightlessness, and I began to glide upward. I did not feel the least bit frightened by the ordeal. After continuing to climb until I was around 9 feet from the ceiling, I halted my ascent and turned around. It has been some days since I have had to truly see myself, and this time it is not in a mirror but rather in the form of my body as it lies still on the hospital bed below me. What a depressing and pitiful look it was, a grayish-white deathly emaciated color with profoundly sunken eye sockets and cheekbones. But, in spite of this horrifying sight, there was a magnificent impression of a serene serenity and overall wellness. It appeared as though I could see and hear everything and everyone within the enormous ward practically as soon as it began, and nearly immediately after that, I became aware of a heightened feeling of awareness. After that, it dawned on me gradually that I wasn't alone, and I'm not referring to the other people who were in the ward at the time. Someone was coming up behind me, but I couldn't see them. My entire being started to be engulfed in an unfathomable and overpowering love, and along with it came a sensation of delight that cannot be adequately described. I became aware that there was a haze of light blue all around me. Then, a faint voice that was yet all-powerful whispered in my ear, "Malcolm, Malcolm, it's not your time. Go back immediately." I can't think of a better way to describe the voice than this. Imagine a million power plants operating at the same time, and you still wouldn't be able to come close to matching the amount of energy that his voice produced. And when I say his voice, I mean the voice of a man. There was no question about it. My next recollection is of waking up 2 days later in a new bed, in a different ward, while being attended to by a young nurse. This occurred when I was being moved around by the medical staff.